Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. When a country at war tries to buy cheaper pipeline gas and its allies step in to enforce more expensive LNG instead, you don't need conspiracy theories. You just need to follow the invoice. The story is simple on the surface. Ukraine wants gas. Azerbaijan has gas that already reaches Europe through the Teipi pipeline into Greece. There is a ready-made land route north through Bulgaria, Romania and Moldova, the so-called vertical corridor. A pilot shipment has already been tested, and yet the new deal signed in Athens locks Ukraine primarily into American LNG, not Azerbaijani pipeline gas. Here is where the story stops making sense, at least if you still believe the slogans about free markets and European energy solidarity. Let's go through the physical side first. TAP brings Azerbaijani gas into Greece. From there, 1 billion cubic meters go to Bulgaria, another 8 billion are booked for Italy. This is part of the famous diversification away from Russian gas. On paper, it looks ideal. Non-Russian molecules, existing infrastructure, relatively competitive price. Azerbaijan itself even imports some Russian gas, but directs it to its domestic market to keep exports to Europe flowing, elegant in its own way. Alongside this, you have Ukraine's experiment in summer 2025. Naftogaz and SOCAR move a small test volume of Azeri gas through Bulgaria, Romania, and Moldova to Ukraine. It works. Even Russian drone strikes on a compressor station near the Romanian border only delay flows for a few days. For a rational system, this is the point where you scale the route up and sign a multi-year contract for more pipeline gas. Instead, what appears is a new structure. Atlantic Sea LNG Trade, a company tied to Greek actors, with a contract to deliver American LNG to Ukraine from late 2025 to early 2026 via the same vertical corridor. According to leaks from Athens, Washington does not want Azerbaijani gas moving through this corridor in normal circumstances. In the contract wording, Azeri gas is downgraded to force majeure backup. You can only use it if American LNG is delayed or some technical failure blocks the cargo. This is the part no politician wants to explain on TV. The corridor is diversification as long as it carries the right allies' gas at the right price. Now layer 2, players and incentives. For the United States, this is textbook behavior. It has excess LNG capacity and a strategic goal, lock in Europe and especially Ukraine as a long-term premium market. Being the security provider is not just about tanks and intelligence, it is also about energy contracts that cannot easily be unwound. If Ukraine's gas balance, storage profile, and winter survival depend on U.S. cargoes routed through a Greek hub, that is leverage in any future negotiation about IMF programs, reforms, and political choices in Kyiv. For Greece, there is no tragedy either. Acting as an LNG gateway to the Balkans and Ukraine means fees, status, and a bit more attention from Washington and Brussels. For a country that has spent a decade being treated as the EU's problem child, playing infrastructure darling is not a bad career change. Azerbaijan, of course, wants to sell as much gas as possible to as many buyers as possible, while quietly using Russian imports to stabilize its own domestic system. It gets European money, Brussels gets to pretend it has found a non-Russian solution, and everyone diplomatically ignores the question of which exact molecules are Russian by origin and which are Azeri by documentation. Ukraine's incentive is also clear. Anything that is not Russian is politically preferable, even if it is more expensive. Azeri pipeline gas via TAP and the vertical corridor would give Kyiv some price relief and a narrative of south-north diversification. US LNG via Greece gives political cover with Washington and keeps the sanctions narrative clean. When you are dependent on Western aid to balance your budget, your gas mix is not just about energy, it is about loyalty. Russia plays its own structural game. When the pilot Azeri route to Ukraine appears, a compressor station near the Ukrainian-Romanian border suddenly becomes a drone target. It's not enough to block the route entirely, but enough to remind everyone that any new corridor feeding Ukraine is a legitimate wartime target. You don't have to fully destroy the bridge, you just have to make insurers nervous and raise the risk premium. And above all this, you have the EU institutions insisting that even though Azerbaijan imports Russian gas, TAP is not physically connected to local networks, so no contamination happens. Technically true within a narrow definition, politically convenient on all sides, and completely irrelevant for the final consumer who just pays for whatever mix arrives in the national grid. Layer 3 is where it hits ordinary people. For Ukrainians, US-dominated LNG flows via Greece mean higher import costs, more pressure on the budget, and deeper dependence on external financing. Every extra dollar per megawatt hour does not come from nowhere. It goes either into higher tariffs, more debt, or more fiscal transfers from the EU and the US. For Europeans, especially in the east and southeast, it means that competition in gas is heavily curated. Cheaper Azeri pipeline molecules are available, but contract structures quietly push them into a secondary emergency role so that more expensive cargoes from across the Atlantic get priority. If you remember only one thing from this video, let it be this. In energy crises, diversification often means diversifying away from physics and towards whoever writes the contracts. For the Baltics, Poland, and Central Europe, this pattern should look familiar. We build LNG terminals, talk about freedom from Russian gas, and watch as our energy bills increasingly depend on spot prices and geopolitics far beyond our borders. At the same time, intra-European pipeline options that could create real competition are either underused, blocked by regulations, or quietly captured by a few favored suppliers. If you're in Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, or Ukraine, I'm curious how this looks on your side. Does it feel like energy security or just another form of dependency with a nicer flag? So behind all the talk of solidarity and diversification, the structure is simple. The US is using this window to lock in market share. Greece is monetizing its geography. Azerbaijan is monetizing its role as non-Russian exporter while managing its own dependence quietly. Russia is raising the cost and risk of any route that strengthens Ukraine. And the European consumer, as usual, is the one paying the bill for all four. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and try to remember, slogans don't power grids, systems do.